Welcome to the Remnant by Reclaim 611 podcast. I'm Paula.
And I'm Carrie.
And we are happy to do this once again. We are on our third segment of our Survivor series. And if you all have been listening, I'm sure you're like sitting at the edge of your seat, waiting to hear what's next, waiting to hear what Chelsey has to share with us today. So, welcome back, Chelsey.
Thank you.
We're so excited you're here.
Yeah, we're glad you are here. We're glad you could make it. And we're glad that your story is actually able to be shared across the world. And again, hopefully to open some parents' eyes to some things that may be going on around them, open young girls' eyes to some things that they may overlook. One thing you said last week, just ask that extra question. You know, just about asking that extra question. And hopefully some things you said, not hopefully, I believe some things you said and some things you shared will definitely help the listeners, and it will definitely help us get the word out. So we will continue with part 3. We're going to just dive right in. We're not going to do an introduction. You all already know who Chelsey is, right?
Yeah, that's right. Especially if you're on your third segment, you already know. You've been waiting for this to be posted, really.
Right. So we are just going to dive right on in. At the end of the last segment, we started talking about how she got involved in trafficking in California. How her good friend said, hey, come on down. I have a job waiting for you. You just need some clothes. And we got this perfect setup. And
a bus ticket.
Yeah,
right?
a bus ticket. Perfect setup. And Chelsey said last week, she said, if I had just asked one more question, you know, maybe things would have looked differently. But we're going to pick up from there. And we talked a little bit about the number of men you serviced from the minimum to the maximum amount in a day. But I don't think we really dug deep, like a little deep dive into the type of abuse that occurred, the type of abuse that was basically done to kind of whip you into shape and to whip you into being able to, you know, work.
Well, in that situation, specifically with it being my first interaction with, like, when I was of age and me being forced into it, there's so many different types of, I guess, predators, as you would say, whether it be traffickers, pimps. Like, just within traffickers and pimps alone, they have what you call a Romeo, and that is the one that will introduce himself, sweet talk his way into your life, gain your trust to some extent, to an extent of you believing you're in a relationship, that's what it is. Like, that there's nothing more to it, nothing less. Like, you all are with each other because that's what you both want. But really, of course, that is just until he gets you comfortable enough to where he can say, you know what, babe, we need a little bit of money. Like, do this one thing for me real quick, and we can go shopping. We can do this. And more so, that's when they use the manipulation, the guilt, the shame, all of that kind of stuff. Or that can be led straight into drugs, too. It could be just, hey, let's get high and have fun, and it just be you off for a while, but then eventually it leads to that. Or they have what they call, they have different terms for them, but there's Romeos and there is, I can't think of the correct name, the ones that are just forceful abuse. That, like, it's straight physical. There's no gateway of let's make an introduction, let's gain trust, let's get to know each other on any level. It's, hey, you know what, now you're in my presence and my possession, and this is what you are going to do. Like, there's no choice to that. And that's what that situation was with me. I fought every day that I was there, which thank God I wasn't there that long. There was never a time that I serviced any man in California that I wasn't completely beat up. That I wasn't, I mean, I looked like I had been jumped and thrown into a room. And most of the time, I was tied up along with that. So you walk into a room, a man paying another man to do what he wants with a woman, and he walks into a room and sees a woman that is tied up on a bed or tied to a pole or whatever and beaten bloody. And the fact that they can still look at you and do what they came to do. But my point was, they have different stages. So with him, I was never compliant. There was never any trust. There was never any of that. It was always just strictly physical abuse and verbal, of course. But it was all physical with that. But later, once I actually escaped and came back to my hometown, that's when I ran into my trafficker that is what you refer to as a Romeo. He was my boyfriend at first.
So the first pimp, the one when you met when you first got to California, that was strictly abuse.
Yes.
Not like that. Because there was no relationship kind of for that Romeo sequence. So that is, as you're describing, just complete physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, all of the abuses. And then a second trafficker that you had.
Once I came back home.
Once you came back home. Okay. I think we're going to get to like how you got back
I didn't
home.
want to jump.
No,
Yeah.
no, you're good.
You're good. So, how long did you stay in California, and what did your drug use look like in California?
In California, I was very restricted on anything I could do. At that point, I went out there. Like I said before I left, I was into pills, really heavy. And I had taken enough with me to get me through the ride there because I was assured that once I got there, we could get a hold of whatever. But like I said, I wasn't even allowed to smoke cigarettes. So we smoked weed when he allowed us. And that was it.
Oh, okay.
So I was forced to go through withdrawals from pills when I first got there, too.
Wow. So, not your typical drug use to
Right.
get through, all of the.
Yeah, he was
Services.
very adamant on he wasn't that pimp that his girls were all strung out. He had women that were healthy to a certain extent that weren't complete strung out junkies.
So, when you were in California, were you a bottom bitch?
It was me and his bottom bitch.
Okay.
And
That recruited you from
yes.
before.
Yeah. And it was some girls came and went in between the time that I was there, but for the most part, it was just me and her.
You know, when we talk about the definition of human trafficking, or what defines human trafficking, we talk about three elements: that force, fraud, and coercion, which, if you can just tell by your story, all these three things are there. And a lot of times, there's, because of so much control, a lot of victims don't have any decision or choice if they want to leave, if they want to come and go as they please, if they need access to health care or anything like that. Was that your experience, or did you have any type of freedom to do anything that you wanted to do or needed to do?
No, along with how she recruited me to come out there in the first place, I was also told in beliefs of everything she said that for my employment at a regular job, I needed to bring my ID, my birth certificate, and my social security card. And I brought all three. And that, of course, was one of the very first things that was taken from me. And so that was, once I finally got out, I was getting notifications from T-Mobile, all different types of businesses saying accounts were being opened in my name. Like,
Oh,
my
wow.
credit was ruined.
Wow. So, that's a lot. How long did you stay in California? And if your mind, because I know you told us that some things aren't as, you can't remember as much because of the dissociation, but how long were you in California, and how did you leave California?
Well, the reason, of course, kind of backtracking, why I would have never been able to even be a candidate to become his bottom bitch, because I fought every day. He knew that there was going to be no amount of trust that would be able to be gained between us to where he could trust me to leave me, any of that. So he knew that that the second I got a chance, I was leaving. And he left me and her in a hotel room one night. I was there for, I think, right under a month, probably about 3.5 weeks. He left us in a room, and he had left a phone with her. And I had gained her trust enough because we'd been through certain abuse together. So it's more of a trauma bond because I didn't trust her. Of course, everything in me hated her for what she brought me into knowingly. But we, like I said, a trauma bond is something that really can't be explained. Like other people that it's just you can have experts in certain fields that know everything about a situation, but they can't relate to you on the same level as someone that's been through the exact same thing. So regardless of how mad I was at her, we were still close. But I gained her trust enough that I was able to use the phone. I called my ma and I told her everything. I told her everything that was happening. I was in a very bad part of town where he left us. She was like, she called my uncle. She was like, if you girls can get out of there, I will buy your bus ticket right now, get to the bus station, and you all can stay in your uncle's basement, and we'll take care of it from there. And I told her, and she was like, yeah, I want to go. Or no, she was like, I'm going to stay. And then she said she found out that he had abused me sexually. And in her mind, as the bottom bitch, she thought they were in a relationship. So she felt very betrayed. She was like, I'm going to leave. I was like, then come with me. Like, that's fine. Come with me. But, I mean, as extensive as her trauma was with him and their relationship, she ended up staying. And I told her, I was like, I have to go. Like, I wish the best for you, but you have a clear way out right now. If you don't want to come, then I'm leaving. And I did. I ran out of the hotel. It was like 2 in the morning. I'm in the middle of Inglewood, and I'm walking under these bypasses. I'm on the phone with my mom, and I'm in a mini skirt with some sandals and a tank top. And my mom was like, you've got to find a police officer. So one passes me. I'm walking this way, and they go this way. And I take off running, and they stopped and put it in reverse just because they thought I was a streetwalker. They thought I was working. So I was like, I just need directions to the Greyhound station. And they said, we can't take you right now. We don't have any units that can take you. They said, and we're not going to give you directions to walk. They said, because you will not make it there. They said, it's late, you're white, you're female. He said, you won't make it there. You will get picked up. He said, so I'm not going to tell you how to get there. And I broke down. I was like, I have to. He talked to, which was crazy, a convenience store owner, a foreigner. And the guy agreed to let me sit there until one of their officers got off to come get me at the end of their shift. And they would take me to the bus station. Well, the guy, he was really nice. Gave me cigarettes, whatever I needed. But as time came closer for him to get off, he was like, he was foreign. He didn't speak much English. But what he kept repeating was, if they're not here when I leave, then I'm taking you. And it was pure panic that set in. I was like, I'm never going to get out of here. But luckily, nick of time, a cop pulled in. They took me to the station, and I was able to get home.
Wow. Yeah. I'm just, processing this picture of you leaving, just taking off from a hotel and just,
and I had
running for your life.
Literally.
I mean, that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then a cop is your first encounter. And they knew so well the environment that knew that you wouldn't even make it there. Yeah. Wow. That is a bad part of town.
It's a very, very bad part.
You talked about, you mentioned trauma bond, which definitely, and you did explain it, that from your perspective, it's hard to even explain.
Yeah, it's just,
because,
like I said, just in the specific area of trafficking, there's people that have experience of speaking with survivors, that have worked with survivors, that have helped get girls out of the situation, that have helped lock up pimps, that know everything about, know all the terms, know every step of trauma, everything about it, but they've never experienced it. So, when I got help, I can relate and I can open up to someone that knows everything about what I've been through, but only to a certain extent. When I run into another female that has been through similar things, they don't have to know anything else about my life. They don't have to know anything else about trafficking or the depths of it or how it affects people, anything. It's the fact that we can relate on such a personal level of, I know what pain you've been through. I may not have been through what exactly you've been through, but I know that the pain, the loneliness, the shame, the guilt, everything that rides with it. And it's just a bond that brings you so much closer to someone, whether you know them, anything else about them or not.
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to go back to that for a second. I just think it's true. Like, I'm kind of processing it because we speak about trauma bonds, like, even when we educate. But, yeah, I couldn't – we talk about it in this terminology, but for as somebody who's been through it, to know that, like, the only person you could ever relate to it, not even have to talk about it or explain it to, is somebody else who's been through it, which makes complete sense. But I just think it's so powerful the way you described that.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And so now we are at the bus station.
Yeah.
We're at the bus station and we're headed back to Kentucky. Headed back to Kentucky. Did you have any encounters on your bus trip, like from California to Kentucky, or you made it there safely with no issues? Or
I mean, I made it safely.
Okay.
There was, of course, guys that were on 2 days of the trip that wanted to sit with me and tried to talk me into just getting off with them, and they would provide for me, all that kind of whatever. So I was just at a point that I was so beaten physically that I was like, the fact that you're even trying to talk to me right now, like,
Right.
I was just so spaced out mentally.
I think it's good that even though you don't realize, you had enough sense to say, if you're trying to talk to me and I look like this,
Yeah.
evidently your motives aren't right.
Right.
Your motives aren't right. So you still had this protective part of you that allowed you to make the best decision to get home safely, versus, somebody who had been beaten up and is like, well, nobody wants me, so yeah, let me,
Yeah.
Yeah, mine
Well,
was,
coulda
I
left
knew that I had just barely escaped with my life, and that I was, like I said, so spaced out in my head that I was in complete survivor mode. That, like, don't talk to me and I knew I was on a public bus. If anybody tried anything, I mean, all I had to do was be loud, and it would help. But I was just in such a survival mode that my walls were up all the way around. I got home, and my mom and my sister picked me up from the bus station. I mean, I got home, I fell apart. My sister is a grown woman, and me being 18, her 18 months older than me, I mean, held me as I fell apart, and she raised me. I couldn't get in the shower. I couldn't do anything. Like, I fell apart. But that was something that made us so much closer, too. I mean, she cussed me out up and down when I first left. She's like, you don't know how much you hurt Mom, and I felt guilt about that. But I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm going out here to better myself. Like, I'm going to make money to where I can help Mom get in a house, all that kind of stuff. But it went completely opposite. And no matter what the harsh words were said between us at that point, in that moment, none of that mattered. That was just, she knew how serious it was.
Yeah.
So it was just like a relief to finally be home.
Wow. So now you get home, and if you can think back, did you have any plans once you made it home?
What kind of high as I possibly could.
Okay.
That was the only thing that I knew that I missed that made me feel good even before this happened, that I enjoyed doing, because of course I was abusing it, but I knew that I've been through abuse before in the past, and I knew that it took me a long time to get over it. It being the first experience of abuse as a child, I went through a bunch of different coping mechanisms to see which one fit me. I went through cutting, fighting, all of that. But I knew that this time, drugs was my answer. I knew that that would give me the head change that I needed to not be in my reality and what was going on, because it was too much to process for me. So that was my one and only intention, and that's exactly what happened.
Wow. Okay.
Now, I can imagine coming out of an abusive situation like that. And I mean, I can't imagine, but if, and knowing that drugs was the one thing that was going to take the edge off, that was going to, the ability to even cope. Because at this point, your family knows, and that's it. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to, I'm assuming you want to forget it ever happened.
Yeah. Like, they didn't force me to go into details or any of that. It was an unspoken agreement. Like, they could see me and what state I was in, and that was it.
It was enough. And they just embraced you and where you were at, and and your agenda was to get high.
Absolutely.
Like, that is what I want to do. Just as a side question, did you ever feel like it was ever difficult to feel safe even in your own home after this abusive situation, or did you get home and you were just like, I'm in a safe place, and finally a sense of relief to
I
some
lost
degree?
a sense of feeling safe when I was a child. When I was betrayed by a man that helped bring me into this world, I knew that when I was with my mom, she was my safe space, mentally, emotionally. But I knew that at any minute, if he decided to come over there and do whatever, he was stronger than her, that he could overpower any of us. So that, from a very young age, I stayed at a very heightened sense of being on guard. That made me a very anxious child. And the sense of safety was out
Totally
the
shot.
window since then. But I knew that I was in a place where the people I was around then weren't going to hurt me. So that is what I held on to.
Gotcha. So now you're back home, and you made this. I don't want to say promise. You made a statement in your head. I'll never do that. I'll never be the woman who recruits other women into this type of life. You started talking a little bit in the beginning about Romeo. So tell us a little bit about Romeo in Kentucky.
That was, he is the one and only one of my traffickers that has been successfully locked up and charged with those crimes. Unfortunately, it was only because after I got out, there was 2 minors that came. He got them strung out, and one of them died. But at this point, I was introduced to heroin by a guy that I grew up with, and that was my drug of choice at the time. I was still in the life voluntarily at this point because that's the only way I knew to make money. I worked some jobs, but I couldn't stay sober to keep a job. There was no way. And if I got a job, I was stealing all the stuff shouldn't have been done. So I didn't need a job. But I was on the streets walking, trying to make money. I was sick, and some guy picked me up, and he was like, I have a buddy that has what you need. I'll take you to introduce you to him. And that's what we did. And he saw me, he was attracted to me, and he was like, oh, are you down to do this, this, and this? And I was like, no. No. And he was like, when he saw that I said no to that, that's when he knew what approach he had to take with me. And he's like, okay, well, yeah, my best friend's the dope man, like, I can get you whatever you need. You can stay in my apartment with me, whatever, until you get back up on your feet. And then we started a relationship. Like, I fell in love with this man. Like, I really thought, like, this was it. Like, it was great. And my drug use got way worse. And then it was, well, babe, we need a little bit of extra money. Like, we need X, Y, and Z around the house, or to be able to get you your drugs, we need some money. This is the best way to do it. It's the quickest way. And I fell for it. And then after that, that's when it turned into forceful abuse, into being forced into doing it. It turned physical, of him hitting me. It turned into him staying in the apartments when I had Johns over until I got them in the room. He would listen at the door. If he felt that I got too into it or anything, then I got beat after that because we were still in a relationship.
I mean, you're beat if you don't go, and then you're beat when you do go. It didn't really matter.
Yeah, and I was in drug court at one point, and I ended up being on the run, and I was online selling myself, and my drug court officer saw my pictures, and he called me, acted like a John, and to get up into my apartment building, and he locked me up. But this man knows that the only way he caught me was on a website that people are selling themselves on. and he didn't ask any questions. He didn't say anything to the judge. I didn't get any prostitution charges.
Wow.
And it's like, that's where I feel the judicial system failed me in the beginning, because I wasn't going to speak up for myself. But if that was brought up, then, I mean, I can't say things would have been different, but they could have been. But he was so worried about, I had a $75,000 bond. Like, they make good money off of catching those. So it's like, that was the motive. And everything else was ignored. He ignored the drugs that I had on the plate, on the table in front of me. He ignored that I was prostituting myself. Like, and nothing was said. It was swept under the rug.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations where I'm sure, the mindset is, well, they're in this because they want to be in this.
Absolutely.
They're in this because that's what they want to do, and so they're kind of getting, what they deserve.
Yeah.
Because that's what they want to do. If they didn't want to do that, they wouldn't be on that website.
Right.
Yeah. I saw that I was an avid drug user, and that's what most girls in that city were doing.
Right.
You were hooked on drugs, whether it was by choice or not, and you were selling yourself, whether it was your choice or not. In the court's eyes, that was all you.
So when, you and Romeo, y'all had y'all's relationship, and you started doing things for drugs, so you thought. How long before you started recruiting others?
It was a good at least 6-7 months into it, because I was too jealous. In my eyes, I was so brainwashed. He was my boyfriend. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I was doing this to help us. Like, that made me a good girlfriend, and he was my boyfriend. There was no, he was my pimp. There was none of that in my eyes. Mm-hmm. And eventually it was, well, if we can get a girl or two more, then you won't have to do all the work. Then you could just sit back and tell them what to do. And I wasn't okay with that. I knew the pain that I went through and the stuff that I felt, and I wasn't okay with being the one to introduce another girl into that and potentially ruin her life. Even though there was young girls that are so eager for the attention of any man that they're, yeah, I'll do that, like, and they think it's cute. Mm-hmm. And those were the ones that he would try to bring over, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that. And then it got to a point of, now, yes, you are. Mm-hmm. There wasn't any more questioning. There was no more time to think about it. There was no more conversations. It was, you were doing this, and that's it. So I didn't necessarily go out and find the girls myself. Because he always had girls online writing him, all that kind of stuff. So it was, he would bring girls over. I would never talk to a minor. If he brought a 17-year-old over, I didn't even like speaking to 18-year-olds, because at that age, it's still, like, you're still not grown enough to decide if that's what you want to do. Because don't get me wrong, there's plenty of women in the industry now that are there because that's what they want. There's so many times that I've thought, since I've turned my life around, how easy it would be to go back and how tempting it is, only because of how good the money can be. It goes from me being in the life after I escaped from him to where I was voluntarily in it after that, because at that point I'm so strung out on drugs. I don't know anything else. That's been embedded in me from a young age, and that's all I knew. And it was the quickest, fastest, easiest way to make the most money. Right. And that in itself is addicting.
Right.
Got it. So you were living with him.
Yes.
Living with him and getting your drugs as much as you wanted.
No,
not as much as you wanted.
No.
Okay.
He tried to. That's when it got very difficult. He tried to limit me on what, because he would take everything I earned. Of course, he kept all the money on him. He had a day job, so he would leave me in the apartment because I was loyal. That was my boyfriend.
Right.
So he could leave me there. He knew I was going to make whatever money, and I would walk 4 miles up to his work to give him that money on his lunch break.
Right.
And then I better have more when he gets home, and I might get a shot to not be sick. So it got to the point where I would sneak guys in, but then it got to the point he was sneaking home. He was leaving work early. He'd come home and see me and my ma, and they're together. Hi. Because at one point, we started using together. But, I mean, it just got out of control. He started hitting me in front of my ma, and, I mean, she knew there was nothing she could do about it because I wasn't ready to leave. I was still my man. And it didn't matter. Like, I came up with every excuse for it. Like, I chose this life. Because it's easier to accept if I say I did it than to know that someone else, that I even gave someone else the power to make those decisions for me. And
No, you're good. I was going to ask you, how was your relationship with your mom now that you had moved out with this guy, even though when you came back, you came back to mom's house and they cleaned you up and they held you and, tried to put it back together?
was a very toxic relationship. Me and my mom became close on a level that no mother and daughter should ever. And that was okay with me because that's what I needed in my eyes. That's what I needed, was a mom that I could tell anything to, that, yeah, I could get high with, that, I mean, was my best friend. And that's what we were, and it was a very unhealthy relationship. It didn't matter. She knew what I was going through with him. She came over every day, but the weight was still on me to provide for our dope habit. So really our relationship was just the drugs at that point. It didn't matter. She knew that, I mean, he would hit me in front of her. But that's when I had to separate my mom from the addict. And I knew that I've done things and accepted things in my life as an addict that I never would have in any other circumstance. But that's how I had to look at her, that it was the addict that, it's not that she didn't care. I mean, I made my own mistakes. Like, I introduced her to certain drugs that I shouldn't have. But, I mean, our relationship, it's just, we were very close, and she was everything to me, but it was a very, very unhealthy relationship.
Well, addiction will do that in any form,
Absolutely.
right? And in some ways, it's like you were dependent on him for drugs, right? Like at the end of the day, just not to be sick, and she was dependent on you, and so it was this vicious cycle, going on that would happen when two addicts, right? With
Yeah.
your mom having her addiction and then you also having yours, like you're going to feed each other's addiction. I think in any level, in any addiction, that's what happened. So I think that scenario isn't uncommon, whether it's a mom or a daughter or a best friend or a spouse, like, whatever that is, when you have two people who are struggling in the same area of addiction, like that toxicity is just going to fuel
Right.
itself.
So, did you continue in this relationship with Romeo, or did you do something else and then get involved in something else?
Eventually, I ran into an old boyfriend that I had prior to him. And I had done the same stuff with him before. And I wanted away from this man so bad that I left him to go into the same situation with an old boyfriend that I had previously done the same things with. And that was okay because me and him, in my eyes, it was okay because we knew each other longer. Like, there was a bond there that, I mean, we met, of course, as he was my drug dealer, but we formed a relationship in my eyes that was unbreakable. Even though he lived with another woman and she had kids, it didn't matter. Like, we still had a relationship, and I was able to get away from him just to go right back into the same thing. And this man, had beaten me in front of my 89-year-old grandfather before. Like, I have a scar right here from him having a cast on and hitting me. Like, I mean, things got really bad, and it just got more and more toxic, all the way down from my relationship with him to my relationship with my family and my mom. My drug use was out of control, and I was just stuck in a vicious cycle and a revolving door that, like I said, at that point, I didn't know anything else. Like, sex work was all I knew, and it was good money. So, yeah, I left one abusive man to go be with another one to do the exact same thing. But he didn't make me involve other females.
Gotcha. All right. Now, you're here today.
By the grace of God.
And we are so grateful.
And you're telling us your story. And you point out that, it was a vicious cycle, going here, there, here, and there. How did you get off or jump off that downward spiral? What happened to where you decided this is not going to be my life for the rest of my life?
I didn't make that decision on my own.
Okay.
I was on probation. I was reporting, and once I got back with my other ex,
Which one?
the second one that I left my
First one.
Romeo for.
Okay.
Left Romeo
Yeah.
for another one.
Okay.
Okay.
So I was with him, and he decided that it was an inconvenience to him for me to keep going to report. So therefore, I went on the run. But before I went on the run, when I reported my very last time in person, a man was in my PO's office, and he introduced himself as a human trafficking detective. And he works for the Attorney General's office, and he had questions to ask me about the man I had just left. And apparently they had locked him up. They were building their case against him for trafficking. I answered the questions, and then I went on the run after that. And at this point, I was not any longer doing heroin. I was being shot up with pure fentanyl. And I was being shot up in my neck to where I was purely addicted to just fentanyl. And I was doing huge shots in my neck at a time. And it's a wonder I'm still alive.
Yeah, sure is.
I was staying with a sugar daddy at the time. I just quit working at a strip club, and apparently Ricky had went and looked for me at the strip club after, because he found out I was on the run, and he told me, he's like, when I heard that, he said, I had just lost a girl before you. He said, I knew in my mind right then I was not going to lose you. So he came looking for me. He ended up finding me online, and he did the same thing. He called me and acted like a John, but he was very professional. He brought the cops with him, and he locked me up. And he made promises to me, because I was facing 13 years at this time from warrants in different states, out of different counties for various reasons. And I knew that when I got caught, my run was over. He was like, I can help you. I can help you. And I'm like, stop. I'm like, no, you can't. You don't know what my judge said. You can't. And he locked me up, and he's like, I'm not going to leave you in here. And he made me promises that surprisingly he kept. He's the first man that has given me his word on something and not lied to me about it. He's not ever once told me anything I wanted to hear because it would shut me up or satisfy me. He was very brutally honest with me, and he stuck by my side. And instead of me doing 13 years, I served 3.5 months, and he got me into a program in Texas for women that have been through human trafficking. And had that man not locked me up that day, I would not be here. Because when he locked me up and I got upstairs after I got out of booking, I hit the ground, and that's when I completely surrendered. I said, God, like, if you are real, like, I've had my doubts. I've had my beliefs. I've had my doubts. But, like, I'm done at this point. Like, I'm at the end of my road. I can't do anything else. And I said, if everything that I've heard about you is true and I am worth anything, then I give you full control. And that's when Ricky was brought into my life. I was introduced into the program that I went to, and I was able to turn my life around completely. I've been sober for just over 2 years now.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Mhm.
I have an amazing relationship with God. I've made mistakes since I graduated, but it was nothing that I can't fix, you know. And now I'm back down in Texas and starting over again.
Well, there's a lot of tears in the studio today.
Right. Even the person who doesn't have tears has tears today.
I
Wow.
mean, just, when we're at the end of our rope, what's so beautiful is even when we're at the very end of our rope, like, God's never done.
Yeah.
Never, ever. He's not at the end of his rope. He never will be at the end of his rope. And he's a God of restoration and redemption. And he brings people, he uses his people to help rescue his children. And that's what's going through my mind as, like, the tears is, like, his name is Ricky, right?
Yes.
And the Lord used him to help rescue you,
Absolutely.
and just show you for the first time what a trusting relationship could be like and somebody you could actually trust, because your past shatters any trust with any person whatsoever.
And
And
especially for it to be a man that could reinstill that kind of
Yes.
trust in me. He's like a
Yes.
father to me. And
So
like I
beautiful.
still have communication with him to this day. Like I look to him for advice. Like he's very much still involved in my life and pro me. Like so
so amazing.
yeah.
It's really beautiful.
Oh.
Thank you, Ricky, if you're listening.
Yeah, he is. For sure.
So, as a victim of trafficking,
A survivor.
survivor, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
survivor.
Come
that's
on,
right.
Paula. No, I'm just kidding. You know how to give Paula a hard time
Yeah,
today.
I know. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I know, right?
As a
I,
sur-
I
as a
felt
s-
bad after I said
No,
it. Sorry.
it's okay. It's okay.
Instant regret.
I'm okay. I can be corrected. As a survivor of trafficking, sometimes when you come out, you still have signs or brands
Yes.
because traffickers or pimps like to brand their girls, right?
Yes.
And it's usually what are some branding things that they
Some use burning, like actual brands. Other ones do tattoos, whether it's professionally or homemade. I've seen females that have the man's name literally carved in their back. And, I mean, it can be rough. And you're lucky if a brand is all you leave with, really. I had two on this hand, on my right hand, that were given to me by my trafficker. It was a crown because he considered himself a king, and it was a star because that was my working name. That's the name I worked under, and it was my mom used to call me that as a kid. So it kind of him using that against me, it kind of just killed it. But once I came back down here to Texas, I had a woman that's like a mother to me reach out to see if she had any connections to find someone that could do cover up tattoos. And a woman said yes, why? And she told her a little bit about what happened. And the woman said, I have a guy that can do it and I will pay full price for it. And so, yeah, it was such an amazing thing to be able to look at my hand and see something that doesn't hurt. Yeah, it doesn't bring up all the bad stuff. Now
And
I
it's
can actually
beautiful.
see something that's beautiful. And
So what did you pick?
yeah.
it is.
And what does it mean?
It is the all-seeing eye. It's supposed to like God in my eyes, and a lot for me is that like I, as an addict in my addiction, I've done horrible things, and I've done things that I don't feel are unforgivable, but they are very harsh things, and it's stuff that I would have never done had I been in a right relationship with God, had I been in the right state of mind, all of that. So it's also like kind of just a very blunt reminder, like God is in everything I do, that he sees everything. So what I do, I need to do in accordance with him and what follows and honors him more than anything else. And that hopefully me getting this tattoo of an eye over my brand means that I can tell my story more and open more people's eyes to what is going on around the world.
That's what I was sitting here thinking, is that you're sitting here opening people's eyes to the truth of what human trafficking is and what addiction looks like, but also to the grace of God and how he does restore us and he does redeem us, and the truth of the gospel. And you get to open eyes to all of those things. So it is just no words for how cool, how amazing, and how beautiful that tattoo is.
Right. Thank you. So we thank you, Chelsey, so much for taking out time and just helping us, helping the listeners, putting a voice to what a survivor looks like, what a survivor goes through. Thank you for being bold enough and transparent enough to share and to have true, raw emotion in it. You know, to still be connected to your story, to be able to tell it, and to want to help others. So thank you so much for that. And if you have any emails or questions, you can email us at
Support at reclaim611.org, or you can check out our website at www.reclaim611.org.
For some reason, I feel like Carrie wants to say something else.
I mean, I kind of do. I think one thing that you mentioned that we passed over really quick was that you went to a program here in Texas called Refuge for Women, and you went through their program. And we've actually had the executive director here, and we've talked with Refuge for Women. And so I just really wanted to point out that you've successfully done a program that, I'm not going to speak for you, but it was good. Like, it was a program that's changed your life.
The program absolutely saved and changed my life. I, of course, just like any survivor, I can't speak for anybody else, but I still have, I guess you would say, long-term side effects from trauma. Like, I still deal with PTSD really bad. I have anxiety. Like, I have night terrors that scare me out of my sleep. But that program, like, helped me face trauma and build my relationship with God and be able to cope with things in such a healthier way. That, yeah, I still deal with it, but that's because I believe the healing is never fully done. And I'm okay if that's all I have to deal with for the rest of my life. The fact that I'm on the other side and I'm sober and I have a relationship with God is everything to me.
So if there's listeners, whether you are in trauma, you are currently in a situation, like I think it's important to know and to hear that these programs can change your life, that they're there for a reason, and they've changed your life. And if you're listening and maybe you have an idea of what a program would be, and maybe it's a negative thing, that, you know, Chelsey's here to say that it could really change your situation and meet people who know exactly what you've gone through. Well, maybe not exactly, but can identify with the type of trauma, are not there to judge you and to point you to a God who is capable of restoring all things. So, yeah, thank you, Paula, for reading into my nonverbal. I did want to make sure we talked about that, because that's an amazing piece of your healing journey. Yeah. Do you have anything, Chelsey?
No, I'm just
extra that
eternally grateful that you guys
you
allowed me here to share my story. It means a lot to me.
Is there, not to put you on the spot, but is there anything else you would want to share for anyone who is listening?
I don't know. I just say the best thing I could say would probably just be, don't be so quick to judge. Like, ask more questions and don't make so many quick assumptions about people that you see or situations that they're in. Don't be so quick to judge, and like, just ask questions, care enough, because if people ask more questions about anything, there's always a chance that that question might be the one time that person reaches out for help or answers or ask any other questions. Like, kindness can take you so far, and to helping people into anything. It's just judgment is so harsh for someone that's been through so much trauma already that is trying their best to process it, that when you have someone judging you on top of that, it just puts a negative shade on things, and it's very harsh. So just be kind.
That was a perfect way to end. So true. Ask more questions.
Be less judgmental.
Yes. Be kind.
All right, guys. And until next time, don't forget to step into the fight.
That's right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.